Go ahead, Susan.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Siegel, and I'm President and CEO of the Americas Society and Council of the Americas. I'd like to send a very warm welcome to our members, special guests, and everyone from around the world who are tuning in to our live webcast. It is a pleasure this afternoon to welcome our guest of honor, Brazilian Foreign Minister Ernesto Araújo, and the Ambassador of Brazil to the United States, Nestor Forster. After being appointed by President Bolsonaro, the Foreign Minister took office in January of 2019. He was formerly Director of the Department of the United States, Canada, and Inter-American Affairs. He also served as at the Brazilian mission to the European communities in Brussels and the embassies in Germany, Canada, and the United States. As the two largest democracies and economies in the Western Hemisphere, the United States and Brazil have long shared a commitment to economic development and prosperity in the region. Both are continental countries with diversified economies and strong investments. The United States is Brazil's second largest trading partner and the most important destination for Brazilian exports and services and manufacturing. At $108 billion, the United States accounted for 19% of all foreign direct investment in Brazil in 2018, the second largest single country stock of Brazilian FDI that year. Last October, Brazil and the United States signed a new protocol on trade rules and transparency, the so-called mini trade deal, with provisions which facilitate trade, improve regulatory cooperation, and strengthen anti-corruption efforts between the two countries. This recent diplomatic achievement shows the depth of this relationship and the potential for further cooperation. This is precisely why this meeting is so timely, especially in the light of the new administration in the United States. Brazil is a key market for many of our corporate members around the world, and we thank you once again, Mr. Minister, for joining us today. This event is on the record. The minister will speak, and then he will take questions. So if you have a question, please send it in writing to me, the presenter, via WebEx chat, and your question will be added to the queue. Before giving the floor to the minister, it is my great pleasure to turn it over to Nestor Forster, the Brazilian ambassador to the United States, for opening comments. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon to all of you who join us here today. I want to thank Susan Siegel and the Council of the Americas for organizing this event with Foreign Minister Ernesto Araújo. As Susan said at the outset, it could not be more timely as Brazil and the United States enter a new phase in our 200-year partnership between the two largest democracies and the two largest economies in the Western Hemisphere. Our two governments have already interacted on numerous occasions since President Joe Biden's inauguration. Presidents Bolsonaro and Biden have exchanged substantive letters in which they have reaffirmed the bond of friendship between our countries and the core principles and values shared by our peoples. The two leaders have also mapped out the way ahead for cooperation in key areas such as environmental protection, clean energy, trade and investment, science and technology, and of course, the promotion of our democratic values in our hemisphere and beyond. On the Brazilian side, Minister Araújo stands at the forefront of this agenda and has already spoken to the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, about the renewed relevance of our strategic alliance in the face of multiple regional and global challenges. Minister Araújo, alongside with Environment Minister Ricardo Salles, also had a joint meeting with the Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, former Secretary John Kerry, discussing how we can work together on climate change and fighting deforestation and the challenges of sustainable development, both at the bilateral and multilateral levels. Let me just add that we appreciate the role played by the Council of the Americas and its members who have historically supported our endeavors towards a closer bilateral relationship, a true source of prosperity and well-being for Brazilians and Americans alike. The Brazilian government is always open to hear the views of representative groups within both the U.S. and Brazilian society on how to deepen mutual understanding and find new ways to strengthen our ties. In this spirit, and under the guidance of Minister Araujo, our embassy in Washington has been constantly reaching out to leaders of all sectors to promote a candid exchange of views on all topics. I believe Minister Araujo's presence among us today confirms once again Brazil's openness to dialogue and consensus building and its commitment to work with our American friends towards new and ambitious goals. In closing, let me just say that nobody has been a greater champion for a renewed Brazil-U.S. partnership than Foreign Minister Araujo, and I'm sure you all look forward to hearing from him today. I'm sure I do. Thank you very much.
Mr. Minister, the floor is yours.
Here with you, with Nestor. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so thank you so much to Susan Siegel. Thank you, Susan, for this introduction, and also to Ambassador Forster, who's also doing a terrific job. We wouldn't be able to be doing so much between Brazil and the U.S. without your presence there and your amazing work in Washington. Thank you for everyone watching. It's really a great opportunity to be here with you to talk about where we are now in this so important partnership between Brazil and the United States. To assess where we are, maybe we can start by talking a little bit about where we were until 2 years ago and for quite some time. I think we can say that for 2-3 decades before President Bolsonaro came into power, we had a strong deficit of confidence, a very pronounced deficit of confidence between Brazil and the U.S. For different reasons, we could analyze this or psychoanalyze this, but it was there. It was there and recognized by, I think, people from both sides. The impulse was sometimes there for better relationships, but during those 3 decades, we couldn't overcome that deficit of confidence. I think that had to do, and it's our self-criticism that speaks here. Maybe it was a problem on both sides, but from our perspective, maybe the main reason was that since the beginning of the 90s, Brazil decided to stay away from what was happening basically in the world, the beginning of globalization with the restructuring of world trade chains, economic chains, and also this new drive towards a world really built for democracy. Brazil stayed away from big trade initiatives. We never wanted to go towards some sort of NAFTA-style agreement with the United States or with other partners. Later, Brazil avoided and worked to let's say, I don't want to use the word destroy, but maybe it's not too strong, the idea of the free trade area of the Americas, the FTAA. So Brazil not only didn't want to be a part of that, but it didn't want anyone to be a part of an FTAA. And we took an adversarial attitude towards the U.S. and other developed countries at the WTO, for example. We started to, not started, but decided for some reason to just be a part of, let's say, the developing team, like as if the world was divided between two teams, developing and developing countries and developed countries, which led to stalemates also at WTO level. but not only in trade. Also, and this has to do with our attitude to trade, but it's a different dimension. Brazil wanted to be a part of some sort of South American bloc, conceived as a bloc hostile to the U.S., or at least very distant and cold to the United States. A bloc that started to take different shapes in the 2000s, but it was based on a very ideological approach from the early 90s, where some leaders of Latin America, some of them who became presidents of their respective countries, decided to try to rebuild in Latin America the Iron Curtain that had just disappeared in Eastern Europe. And this more or less converged to the idea of the UNASUL in the 2000s, even with ideas of building some sort of defense capacity that would be able to, let's say, protect this space as something closed to the north of the continent and open to we don't know what. But so this was basically a Lula-Chavez joint venture, so to say, which of course drew us very much apart from the U.S. Because at the same time we inside that project, Brazil was also away from democracy promotion efforts in the region, away from recognizing the threats to democracy that were emerging, for example, in Venezuela, because to a large extent those threats were brewed in Brazil or with Brazilian participation. This system was irrigated to a large extent by corruption schemes that departed from Brazil, that had roots in Brazil, and that helped maintain some political currents in power in so many other Latin American countries. So a project that was very different from anything that could fit into a productive Brazil-U.S. partnership, and of course was not conducive to confidence between us. And in all that, it was not a question of hostility or indifference to the United States as such. It was more, I think, hostility to, let's say, the Western model. The Western model, which is not a geographic concept, because Eastern Asian nations are part of that, and other countries. The model of liberal democracy with market economy and openness to the world. The model that people opted for at that time was something that we can give different names to, but one name that I like to call it is narco-socialism, because it has to do also, it points in the direction of the connections that sort of scheme had with organized crime in the region. So at the same time, from the point of view of Brazil, preferential relations started to be built with powers from outside the region, from other continents, who became our main export markets and strategic investors in the region, in Brazil, especially in the infrastructure. This goes with no criticism to the partnership that was developed with those countries, but shows that for quite some time, conscious effort was made to replace our traditional economic and trade partnership and investment partnership with the United States and other developed countries with other partnerships. And Brazil shunned OECD as let's say, the cornerstone of that sort of Western liberal democratic model with market economies, and avoided any other trade agreements, not only FTAA or some NAFTA-style agreement, but the EU-Mercosur agreement, I mean, it was there, the negotiations were always there, but never to the point of really be taken for a long time, at least, to be taken seriously. And okay, that's something that we would like to conclude. It was more part of the ballet and not something with more strength to it. This approach domestically led to deindustrialization, because United States and European countries, especially Japan as well, have always been our partners in industrialization and industrial investment, manufacturing investment, and high technology investment. This was, continued to some degree, because we were always that sort of hybrid economy with some pockets of excellence. But as a general design, very strong deindustrialization during those times. Well, corruption, of course, as you know, I don't need to mention a lot about that. It looked like the plan was to paraphrase Woodrow Wilson, was to make Latin America safe for corruption. Right? The idea, okay, let's build this space here where no one can come in, and where each country, and Brazil in our case, will bask in the glory of the system of a certain circuit of power and a state-led economy. So we lost our place in the global value chains that were being built, and our partnership with key partners like the United States was not, was totally discontinued for different reasons, but during those 30 years. In the Obama years, during the Obama administration, and I kind of followed that closely, was the moment I was working in Washington. The idea emerged, especially from the U.S. side, that United States and Brazil would become strong partners in the global issues, and that's where we would build our connection from. So, especially environment, but also other issues were considered the key to partnership. So we would converge there, and from that sort of convergence, the confidence would be back, and we would start building new initiatives and the kind of relationship that Brazilians always wanted, because that's a very important point. We know that anyone who has been more than a few hours in Brazil, I think, knows that Brazilians love the United States. They love the American way of life, American way of doing business. There's a strong and very deep connection between the two peoples who have so much in common, open, dynamic, innovative societies, open to the world, open to diversity. But this didn't, for a long time, this didn't play out with government, especially the Brazilian government. But so during those years, 2008 to 2016, more or less, we thought that we could build this relationship from the global issues down, and confidence could be restored. But this didn't take place. It was not enough to create the roots, the spirit that would lead to a very concrete partnership. So, because from the Brazilian side, and I mean, kind of witnessed that we worked with those issues at that time. At the end of the day, with all the rhetoric, but Brazil didn't want a solid bilateral partnership in trade or in investment or in security issues, among others, because this didn't fit with the model that was still there in Brazil. This model of isolation, of keeping the power structure in place with those gives and takes and corruption and that sort of mechanism. So lots of hopes were deceived back then. So since the then, I mean, we some attempts to catch up during the last administration in Brazil, but it was a transitional period in Brazil. Of course, the elections in the United States with the coming into power of Donald Trump, but this was not a moment that we really could rebuild, especially because this transitional government in Brazil didn't feel it had the, let's say, the all the strength that was necessary to go against the current, because the current in Brazil, the establishment, the foreign policy, and to a certain extent foreign trade establishment are basically, let's say, not conducive, or they tend to refuse automatically a strong partnership with the United States. So the previous administration wanted to go ahead, but didn't have the political power, I think, to do that. And I think things really started to change after the beginning of the Bolsonaro administration in Brazil, when we really set to restructure all that with a government that came from an election with all the legitimacy of a very strong electoral victory. And it was not only a question of the Brazil-U.S. relation, it was a question of our project of transforming Brazil deeply, of transforming Brazil into a modern economy, a market economy, overcoming the old system of not necessarily corruption, criminal corruption, although that too, unfortunately, but of patronage and, that circulation of economic power according to a political logic and not according to a market logic. And also other aspects of transformation. But we really saw that we needed the United States as a key partner, or maybe the key partner for that transformation, partner in economic opening and modernization, but also in privatization, not only in the sense of selling state companies, which is underway. I think that's good news for our friends in the U.S. and around the world. The perspective of privatization of the mail, for example, Correios, but which just was announced last week. But it's not only a question of that; it's a question of the whole mentality of the economy that we set to and that we're trying to change, to really transform Brazil into a country driven by the private sector, driven by private investment, and not by public investment. Because in the previous system, you had state companies that were misused, but also private companies, the champions in some sectors that were employed as tools for the system and not as private companies, even employed to export that sort of scheme to other countries of Latin America. So it's not easy. It's not trivial to change that very ingrained system, and we need a partner of the size and capacity of the United States. So one important aspect in that equation is reindustrialization. We lost maybe 30 years, as I said, in being part of the value chains. Today, you cannot be a modern manufacturing country without being part of those chains. Some specific companies managed to, but because they were against the current again. And we need to come back to where we were with a new base. To rebuild a platform for a strong industrial nation. That Brazil cannot, a country this size cannot be a fully fledged democracy with in the way to prosperity, good jobs, good opportunities without a strong manufacturing base. In those during those previous periods, a very strong relationship was built with China, which is great and which led to a very strong growth in our agriculture and agribusiness sector. But the industrial manufacturing was basically forgotten. Also, more modern services sectors were basically left out. And what happens is that today, still today, people look at the Brazilian economy and they see it from the side of from the angle of trade, and they say, okay, China is the great partner, which is true for trade. But if you look at investment and the whole industrial manufacturing sector, then the U.S. and European countries as well are the great partner. The U.S. is number one investor, and then you come with basically all European countries until place 12, 13, 14 as the major investors. So it's a question of, okay, let's keep what we have in agribusiness and all that cluster, but let's go back to industrialization. And so that's what we said also to accomplish through much more trade integration with the U.S., but not only with the U.S. This was part of a strategy which led us to conclude the EU-Mercosur trade deal, which unfortunately is still not being signed and sent to ratification, but I think this will be the case. But also to our enhancing the bid for OECD with very much political support and technical effort. Also build a new relationship with Israel, which was basically neglected before, to come back to a strong relationship with Japan, another very important industrial and investment partner that had been more or less ignored, and open new frontiers with partners like India, with whom we are having a very strategic relationship now. Just launched the first Brazilian satellite. Brazilian designed and built satellite was launched from India last week. Very symbolic moment for us. The Gulf countries, which were, kind of indifferent to, now they are key partners. The Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all the 6 Gulf countries were very much engaged. Just to show that it's not a question of okay, we didn't like the U.S., now we like the United States. It's not like that. It's a whole strategy that is much deeper, and that's on the economy. But on the let's say security side, we want to shake that narco-socialism system away from Latin America. We need to work together with the large democracies in the region, in the hemisphere, the United States, but also Canada. Has been a terrific partner, a very good partner in that. And we needed to realize, and we started to realize, that in order to protect democracy, to promote democracy in the region, and not allowing totalitarian projects to take hold, we also need to fight organized crime, because they're basically the same thing. It's basically a criminal network that keeps Maduro in power in Venezuela, for example, but also political power like the one that Maduro still enjoys, keeps terrorism and crime with bases and opportunities, so to say, in the region. Unfortunately, organized crime, with all those aspects, including terrorism, are alive and growing in the region. Venezuela is the hotbed for all that. Though it's not purely Venezuela, they are threatening democratic systems all across the region. So for quite some time, and still today, when we talk about this, it's seen as a left versus right situation, and it shouldn't be seen that way. It's not because we read Adam Smith and they read Marx and Engels that we have this problem. It's because you have this whole system that is associated with organized crime, which is threatening our families, which is threatening our security, even in Brazil, because they use the same channels of arms trafficking, the same channels of money laundering. So the traditional, let's say, corruption and the more modern organized crime they basically share the same network. So today it's not left against right. It's clearly a sort of criminal political system against law and order on the other side, open economies and real democracy. What we set to try to do. I'm about to finish. I thought I would take. I didn't think I would take that long with those ideas, but just to give that contrast between what we're trying to do now and before. So regarding Venezuela, we're starting to work much more closely with the U.S. and diplomatic isolation of the regime in order to bring them seriously to the table, which cannot be a table among equals, should be a table among the regime which is dictatorial, which tortures people, etc., and people who want democracy back to Venezuela. But also to investigate their crimes, their connection to organized crime. We had resolutions of the treaty for the Inter-American, the TR, right? How is that in English? The Treaty for Inter-American Cooperation, right? Which I mean, it's a very strong instrument that has not been used frequently, and we passed resolutions under its umbrella to investigate crimes related to the Venezuelan regime. But so basically, the change, the contrast is that Brazil was part of the problem, and now we're trying to be part of the solution. I think that's very clear in the region. And the U.S. is a key actor with all its capacity, its political, geopolitical power, economic power, intelligence. I mean, all the crime-fighting capacity that the United States has. At the same time, we needed and we need the United States to become stronger in classical defense. It's every day it becomes the difference between security and defense becomes more and more blurred. It's obvious that we need good police forces, but also defense forces in order to fight this threat network that exists in the region. It would be great if we could separate security and defense, but increasingly they have to work together. And the military in Brazil, let's say, hard power was neglected during the many years before, maybe consciously, probably consciously, in order to make Brazil a non-relevant actor in terms of hard power. And we need soft power, of course, but that kind of security threat you cannot face only with soft power, only with movies and songs, right? You need hard power for that. So just a few key areas where the kind of transformation that we want for Brazil, for the region, pass through necessarily a very productive relationship with the United States. And how we tried to do that by basically by building confidence. So we come back to the beginning, by building confidence again around a common vision, and that's what I think Presidents Bolsonaro and Trump were able to do. They were able to create a framework of confidence and a sense of shared endeavor, shared values among them, which was there already among the peoples, but among Brazilian and American people, but was denied, I think, for many years. So. I mean, for us who worked with those issues, the contrast was very, from the Brazilian point of view, very strong. Before, we used to, in many cases, refuse to work for our own values as long as the U.S. was together. All right, we didn't want to be seen with the U.S. together in the same room, so to say. I personally have seen that sort of thing happening in the previous administration. For example, there was already a good disposition to work for democracy in Venezuela. But I have seen, for example, a OAS resolution that arrived and was very good, very strong on Venezuela. But then when people ask, oh, who's co-sponsoring it? The United States. So we'll stay away. Okay. So the sort of image or sentiment was considered stronger than our own values and interests in promoting democracy in that case. So since 2019, we started speaking about an alliance, not only about partnership or a relationship, because that's what we felt we wanted and we still want. Something solid, something for the long run, something that is based not in the daily balance of give and take, but on the objectives for what we want for our nations, what we want for our people, our region, for the world. And we achieved many things during the last couple of years, especially in trade, but also in defense, in democracy, promotion, in security. And that's curious because in Brazil, it's still commonly argued that we didn't get a lot in terms of trade during those 2 years, or that there was an imbalance in favor of the U.S. And we think it's totally the opposite. I shouldn't be saying that because, okay. But I think we had the three agreements that you mentioned, of course, are great for both, and start to catch up with the regulatory updating that we need in order to promote a strong investment again, and investment is coming, but also in other areas like that were traditional problem, like ethanol. We managed to start at least a meaningful conversation with meaningful advantages for both sides, maybe more for Brazil this time, but that's not what we wanted. We wanted and still want a full-fledged agreement, not only on that area, but on everything, full-fledged trade agreement. And we believe that's totally possible and decisive for us. But not only bilateral, we had progress also multilaterally in the WTO. Now Brazil and the U.S. are partnering for a meaningful reform of the WTO, one that leads to really establishing a level playing field again in the world economy. Then we have to address tough issues like state-owned enterprises and industrial subsidies, agricultural subsidies, of course. But and we're very ambitious as Brazil now. We want to do whatever is there in terms of competitiveness, because we're opening our economy otherwise. So we need the level playing field that the WTO can provide, and we're side by side with the United States in that effort. The OECD, totally decisive support from the U.S. for Brazil joining the OECD, which we hope will take place soon. This is also decisive for us, very important. It's a way of anchoring Brazil in this atmosphere, this model of liberal democracy and market-led economies that we want, and that is not. I mean, it's an acquired taste for for many Brazilians in a way. Although that's we're convinced that's the way to go. But the gravity force, if we leave the rock there, it will roll down the hill all the way back to statism and to patronage and that sort of system. So we have to keep going until we can consolidate this new model in Brazil, because we feel we belong there, and we belong together with the U.S. and the other democracies in the model that the OECD stands for. So. I mean, I said I was about to finish, and I really am, but I think that's an important thing to say as well regarding Brazil specifically, and why we were there in this drive towards transformation, and that requires this transformation in the Brazil-U.S. relationship. Because Brazil today is built on what we call, for lack of a better name, the liberal conservative alliance. which maybe sounds strange for American ears because of the way the words liberal and conservative are used, but that's where we're at. The liberal approach to the economy, to build a private-led, market-oriented economy, but on top of a society that is built on trust, on strong communities, strong families, on individual responsibility, on less state and more civil society. So this vision of conservatism, that is the way that you can describe a society that is built from the bottom up and not from the top down. So this is the kind of amalgam that we see in Brazil today taking shape. Those that we can call conservative values, the value of work, individual creativity, individual freedom. I think freedom is the concept that unites the liberal and the conservative approaches. Let's say the conservative and liberal values converge there and converge towards a market economy in terms of the economy, but also in a society that is shaped, that is solid and shaped on shared values in terms of let's say the non-economic aspects of social life. And that's where we want to meet the United States from, and that's where I think we are now. And I would like to say that, talk a lot about the past or the recent past, but where we are now, we're at the same place that we were. I mean, nothing changed for us on January the 20th regarding what we want to accomplish and the importance of the partnership of with the United States. We think it makes total sense. It makes total sense from the material, the concrete trade and economic interests, but also our vision of the world, the way we need to work together for democracy, against organized crime, against threats to democracy and in the region, maybe in the world as well. So our determination to have a strong alliance is there because it's rooted in what Brazilians feel. It's rooted in this the sentiment that I call the liberal conservative alliance in Brazil. It's rooted in history and in interests, in concrete interests, and in this drive to transformation. I think we're together and we'll be together in everything with the Biden administration as before, because it's the natural thing to do in our view. We were absolutely together in climate. That's very important to say. Conversations that myself and Ricardo Salles, Minister of the Environment, had with John Kerry, and the technical work that is going on after that shows that we can work as key partners towards not only a successful COP26, but a reshaping of the, or not reshaping, but the fully implementing of climate instruments and climate agreements. There's no philosophical difference there. There are differences of approaches, how to do this, how to do that, but and overall the disposition for cooperation regarding deforestation, for example, is totally there. The disposition for meaningful investment in sustainable development in the Amazon, for example, seems to be totally there. So something that was regarded as maybe an impediment to the continuation of this drive towards an alliance. I mean, it's totally out of the way now. We're working together also in that area. So as you see, I'm very upbeat about what we can do. And just to finish, I'm only sad because some currents still want to keep Brazil and the U.S. Away from each other. Currents in Brazil, especially, which know what this means for the transformation that we undertook to do in Brazil, and want us to. They know that how much weaker this transformation will be without a strong Brazil-U.S. partnership, and how much easier it would be to go back to the older system, which was, I think, bad for everyone, for economic development, but also for democracy, not only in Brazil, but in the whole region. But I think those people are a minority, those currents are a minority. And what we hope is that everyone who looks at this in good faith, and I think it's everyone here, obviously, can see the enormous value of this alliance. I use that word again, in permanent construction, but I think we need to be very ambitious, and we'll see that it can totally be accomplished. Thank you. Sorry for speaking more than I was supposed to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Araujo. And I have at least 20 some questions that have come in as you spoke. And so I'm going to try to bundle them. I think you've spoken to a lot of them, but we have a number of questions that are very specific about how President Bolsonaro and President Biden can build their relationship personally. And is there a bilateral meeting on a possible bilateral meeting on the table? Maybe if you could just address that in 2 minutes, and then we'll go on to another set of questions around the Amazon, the climate, et cetera.
Sure. No, we have high hopes for that. Well, first of all, they have the same initials, right? JB and JB.
I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right.
Right. No, I think the relationship can be very good at presidential level. It's very important that it be very good. I think we have let's say the same approach to the fundamental things that are there. I think that was reflected in the letter that President Bolsonaro sent to President Biden, and the letter that President Biden sent to President Bolsonaro this week. Those key issues, those pillars of this building are there: democracy, prosperity, and values, so to say. This is a more, let's say, it's more difficult to define, but it's totally there. Some nuances that we recognize in the administration regarding climate, for example, which was not that much of an issue in the previous administration, but I think they come from the same approach, and we are converging to that, maybe with different instruments, but the values are there. And I think they're both practical-oriented leaders that want to leave something strong, not only to talk about stuff. Leaders were not afraid of taking tough decisions, as we have seen in Brazil for 2 years, and in the US now for a little over 1 month. And in our case, we clearly need tough decisions in order to really transform the system. And as I said, especially in the beginning, it was going against the current to build this partnership. So we see that sort of political courage and enormous public support, I think, in both sides for both presidents. They both come from, let's say, record numbers in terms of, that's another coincidence, in terms of votes in their respective elections. So I see only a good perspective in, let's say, the personal interaction. So
thank you very much. So following on, are you doing anything specific? Is the Brazilian government doing anything to remove the obstacles in relation, not just with the Biden administration, but with the European nations created by Amazon's deforestation? And I'll go one step further, because there's also another really interesting question, which is, what are your expectations? What are Brazil's expectations for the April 22 Leaders Climate Summit? And what sort of result would constitute a win, in your opinion?
Sure. Yes, with Europeans, we have been having this discussion since we finished the negotiations of our Mercosur-EU agreement in 2019. The agreement already has lots of instruments that reinforce environment protection and environment commitments, but we realize that the European side wants to see, let's say, more reaffirming of those commitments, and we are ready to work towards some. We don't want to reopen the agreement because then we would have to negotiate everything from steel to cheese, and this would be impossible. But and especially we're open and with any partner to show that there are a lot of misinformation about Brazilian environment, about our agriculture, about the connection between agriculture and deforestation in Brazil, which is basically non-existent. I mean, it's hard to right, but that's basically the fact. Of course, there is illegal deforestation that we're being combating, but in terms of, I mean, there's no, let's say, incentive. And no agreement we would do. We want to sign any agreement that would mean incentives for deforestation in terms of agriculture production. Our agriculture is growing because of technology. It's growing because of productivity and not because of incorporation of new areas. And it has immense potential to grow on top of technology from our current agricultural area. Basically, only 1/3 is today using the most up-to-date techniques and technology. And so you can imagine what Brazil can accomplish with, and without any sort of deforestation, any incorporation of the land, we could, I don't know, double, treble the production with the incorporation of technology. That's the sort of thing we need to put on the table, because we can not only show that that's the case in Brazil, but also contribute to better agriculture practices in other countries. We can contribute our, let's say, the energy matrix in Brazil. I mean, not directly, but our experience with the energy matrix, which is 70% renewable for electricity, for transportation a little bit less, but for electricity it's 70-something%, right? It's renewable. So we have a lot to show. Not only that we are facing our problems, but we have solutions to present worldwide, and that's what we can do with the U.S., with European countries, and others. Directly with the United States, those conversations with Secretary Kerry's team, I mean, this is pointing very well, and then we go towards not only COP26 but towards the Earth Summit in April. We do think we can arrive there with something significant. From our perspective, what is very important is everything that has to do with financing, right? We want more to see. We need to see more commitment from the richer nations, from developed countries, in terms of implementing the financial commitments of the Paris Agreement. As you know, the Kyoto Agreement. I mean, those countries fell short of financial commitments under the Kyoto Agreement, and now we need. Well, ideally, we would like to see those commitments fulfilled, and the new ones under the Paris Agreement fulfilled. But we think we can get there, and if we get there, we have the best of the world, because you have all the commitments for protection, the contribution that we can give in terms of technology, and also green investment. That's what we need the most. In Brazil, for the Amazon region, it's not only a question of curbing illegal deforestation and eliminating illegal deforestation. For that, you need, I mean, you need not only policy operations, but investment. to create green jobs, to create opportunities for those people. 23 million people live in the Brazilian Amazon. Those people need jobs. They are mostly poor and don't have decent opportunities. So if we can package all of that together, it's really a total game changer.
Thank you very much. It's a win-win for all, I would guess. So we have 4 more minutes. I've got 20 questions, but because it's rolling on in, but I'm going to ask you this one, and if we have to, I'm going to ask you for another meeting in another couple months to continue.
Yes.
So Brazil has an important role as one of the largest democracies and as a leader and role model country for peace. We're seeing more cyber threats and nation-state attacks. Initiatives such as the Paris Call for Peace and Security in Cyberspace is an important multi-stakeholder approach to create a trust and safer digital environment for countries and citizens. Do you think Brazil is going to join this principles initiative?
Yes, I mean, we have to work in that direction. Cybersecurity is obviously part of those that threat network that we see, that we have to face. But it's I think it's a part of the new cyber threat world. Of course, we have state actors, but also non-state actors that can be the source of insecurity in that regard, of threat. And we do see, of course, the potential, the new technologies of the new economy, especially now with the pandemic. We're realizing that the digital economy is, it's totally there. It's maybe more than half our economy now is dependent on digital, right? But so we have to be even more conscious. It's not only, I think, the classical cyber threat, a state actor threatening another state actor. It's the whole gambit of threats that also have to do with the exposition that people are so much exposed now to being hacked, and they'll be much more so, and because they have all their life hackable, so to say. And with the Internet of Things, companies, everyone will be exposed to basically not only the big power structures in a country, but everyone, their fridge or their car can be subject to hacking, right? That's what we need to work with all the international community to find a way, right, which was not easy, to not curtail technological development, but to do it inside the democracy, inside democratic principles and values.
So I have one last question, because in the day of COVID, we can't go without asking at least one question on COVID.
Sure.
We have 4 or 5. And so they're questioning, Brazil's handling of coronavirus pandemic and the current struggles with the Manaus variant and others. So what could go wrong? How can you get Brazil vaccinated and on the path to a normalcy, let's say? And so what's your vision, and what's President Bolsonaro's vision for this, please?
Sure. It's very good. And we were having a meeting this morning about those issues. I mean, we're almost daily, we're discussing the pandemic and the strategy. Almost every agency is involved. So we're taking it, tremendously seriously. And we see regarding the number of cases and the number of deaths, which so tragically has gone up. But apparently it's normal after the start of strong vaccination that the cases go up in a country and then they abruptly fall. We might be 2 or 3 weeks away from that point if you take the same curve in other countries where cases would start to fall. Vaccination is gaining speed. Of course, we would like it to be much quicker, but it's slow compared to the U.S. or Israel. But if you compare to Europe, it's not that slow. I think European countries are a little bit more than 5% in terms of total population vaccinated. In Brazil, we are about 4%, right? With all the logistical challenges that we have. But the numbers will go very steeply up, we're pretty sure. in the next few weeks, also with vaccination. I mean, the health system is, of course, under stress, but it's holding fine. The intensive care units, there's some shortage in some states, but overall the system is holding fine. And people want to basically, of course, people want to be vaccinated, but also people want to go back to work. There's strong popular pressure for not having lockdowns or for ending lockdowns that have been decreed by some state governors. And I think with this mix of the natural fall in the number of cases, even of the new variety, which seems to be following the same curve, vaccination and let's say, and the drive towards normal life again. The economy will take. I mean, the economic growth will take hold again. People will start to feel confident again to come back to the beginning. We also need to the question of confidence among people. But the popular sentiment is that we need to go back to work. So as soon as we have a decent, we already have it, but when we have vaccination really showing it's making the cases decrease, things will look much better, I'm pretty sure, in a few weeks.
Well, with that, Mr. Minister, our time is up. In fact, we're 2 minutes late.
Yes.
Still have so many questions, so I'm going to have to invite you back.
Yes, by all means. I promise to start by answering the question next time, and then I talk.
Delighted. We'll start with an interview. So I want to thank you for your very valuable time. You know, we agree that there is just so much that Brazil and the United States can do together. We have common values. We're continental country. We have huge resources, and together we can do so much in terms of leadership in the hemisphere and in the world. And frankly, I'm a big believer, as I know you are, that this hemisphere can be the most competitive hemisphere in the world if we all work together. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your work, and good luck on your trip to Israel.
Yes.
So much promise that you were telling me about. So thank you.
Yes.
And be safe. And to everyone that joined us here today, please be safe. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Salud.